Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kauschi. Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs, market watch, industries, analysis and insights. We've got you covered right here on Niaga Spotlight. Now this week on future affairs, we're looking at economic impacts of extreme heat. Well, Southeast Asia has been enduring a brutal record-setting heat wave since March, which, despite the current respite via almost daily thunderstorms, is also expected to expand mid-May onwards. It has been called by climate scientists as the most extreme event in world climate history. Soaring temperatures regionally, reaching between 38 to 48 degrees, have gripped much of South and Southeast Asia over recent weeks, killing dozens of people, 3 so far in Malaysia, and forcing millions of students to miss school as well as destroying crops. Power grids are being taxed, and there has been a notable spike in heat-related illnesses and deaths too. This exceptional heat wave is also the world's 11th straight hottest month, with 2024 being projected to be the warmest year ever on record. This begs the question, is extreme heat our new normal? And what then are the best approaches, both medium and long term, to help reduce economic costs and losses? I spoke firstly with Adam Farhan, co-founder and director of Rimba Watch, about their newly launched one-of-a-kind forest tracker and the importance of reducing deforestation rates in Malaysia to zero as an impactful and urgent method to manage extreme weather. Let's watch. Hi, Adam. Good morning. Thanks so much for taking time to join us on Niaga Spotlight.
No worries. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So, Adam, let's get started off by you telling me something a little exciting. Rimba Watch's newly launched Forest Tracker platform. What's it all about? And why is this such an important time that it's also being introduced?
The Forest Tracker is the combination of about more than 2 years of data collection by Rimba Watch. We published this last week, and this is a one-of-a-kind interactive platform that allows users to track past and projected future deforestation in Malaysia through an interactive map which is published on our website. So you can go to it now at rimbawatchmy.com. And basically what the map does is it shows you which areas of forest are going to be cut down based on concessions we have identified and which areas have been cut down in the past. And it also shows you what the concession is for. So like it shows you that this area is going to be cut down for timber plantations, this area is going to be cut down for, like, in some cases, even a shopping mall and so on. This is notable because this is the only database in Malaysia that displays this kind of data on deforestation in a single place. We have literally hundreds of concessions in our database, which covers millions of hectares of forest. And we hope that in the following months, we're going to publish a report that shows an analysis of these deforestation trends, which will be, I think, very enlightening on some of the key trends on deforestation in recent years.
Exactly. Now, casting the net a little bit wider when it comes to discussion, right, Adam? So deforestation, of course, we're looking at immense tracts of forest all across Peninsula as well as Sabah and Sarawak, East Malaysia, right? But at the same time, I think we are seeing more immediate consequences of deforestation, such as an adult tiger that was found dead in Bentong just yesterday. The big cat had been killed by a vehicle as it was crossing the highway. So this is also the third such death of a big cat in just the past 6 months. What are these trends in particular pointing towards when it comes to forest conservation and the habitat of our wildlife being encroached upon?
Okay, so basically what this tracker is showing is it's showing the reality of deforestation. Because right now we've got quite a large data gap about what's really driving deforestation in Malaysia. And so when people talk about deforestation, they may be misidentifying the core problem as, for example, illegal logging or even like palm oil. So narrowing it down a bit further, while palm oil still does drive some deforestation, the tracker identifies timber plantations, which is the growing practice of replacing natural forest in forest reserves, i.e. hutan simpenan kekal, with monoculture, such as rubberwood plantations or acacia. And this practice is currently the main driver of deforestation in Malaysia today. And this is not an illegal practice. This is completely government sanctioned. And this program has even received allocations in previous years' national budgets. This is basically, we have identified the core problem. And in terms of timber plantations, there have been instances where I've looked at EIAs for timber plantations, environmental impact assessments, have found that timber plantations are located in known tiger habitats. For example, there's one project in Hutan Simpan Jerangau in Terengganu involving 5,000 hectares of a timber plantation conversion of natural forest. And the EIA identified, tiger tracks in the project area. So, we've got here the root cause of deforestation, and we really need to take some concrete action right now to stop it, not just from, the context of our current heat wave, the climate crisis, but I mean, these are all interconnected with biodiversity. And, the recent death of a tiger in Bentong really shows the urgency of addressing this right now.
Exactly. And I mean, given the fact that we basically have 150 odd only documented tigers remaining all around Malaysia, one would think that having it on the record that these areas are also tiger habitats would prevent them or actually exclude them completely from being reforested, so to speak, by timber plantations. Could we delve a little bit deeper, Adam, into why it is that timber plantations in particular, or even palm oil, ought not to be considered canopy cover, and what the actual dangers are of such monocropping for the environment itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, palm oil is not really considered forest cover, under Malaysia's definitions, but timber plantations are. And the core reason for this is because Malaysia follows the Food and Agriculture Organization's definition of forest, which is extremely loose, and it involves, for example, it says explicitly in the FAO's definition that rubber wood plantations are allowed to be counted as forest. And so building on this definition, Malaysia defines forest based on what we found Malaysia to be doing as the legal land use. So anything that's legally gazetted as forest is forest. And so forest reserves, all of forest reserves are counted as forest cover, but as we found, millions of hectares of forest reserves are not going to be forest cover anymore because it's going to be converted to monoculture plantations. And the Malaysian rainforest supports hundreds, if not thousands, of species of tree per hectare, and monoculture supports a single species, right? So this has far lower provisions to, for example, ecosystem services. The conversion exposes communities to floods, to landslides, siltation of water sources, and I mean, we are in a climate crisis. The temperatures have risen 1.1 degrees since before the industrial era. Forests cool down locations. For example, a recent report found that when you deforest an area, the local temperature rise is 4.5 degrees Celsius. And this rise can be felt as far as 6 kilometers away from the core area. So we don't have time anymore to waste and to continue cutting down our forests on the pretext of timber plantations. And again, as I said, concrete action has to be taken now, specifically on timber plantations.
Precisely. Rimba Watch has also mentioned quite recently that Malaysia is already set to lose 2.3 million hectares of forests. They have already been earmarked for deforestation. What would be some perhaps strategic approaches? Let's say if government of the day actually becomes sensitized enough to connect this back to the wider extreme heat that everybody has been living under, which is also projected to be coming back towards the later parts of May once again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would like to just note here, again, the climate crisis is a very interconnected issue. And so we need a very cohesive strategy towards mitigating future heat waves and adapting to current heat waves. I'd like to address the role of other drivers of climate change as well in this discussion in driving the current heat wave, namely that of fossil fuels, which contribute 75% of global emissions. So complementing our forest tracker map, we also published our future emissions database recently, which tracks new fossil fuel projects in Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. And what we found is 70 proposed fossil fuel projects, which amounts to billions of tons of CO2 emissions, based on our estimations. And I'd like to bring in here a metric called the mortality cost of carbon, which is the number of excess human deaths estimated to occur by 2100 as a result of extreme heat exposure, based on the cumulative impact of a single ton of carbon. And so based on our database, the emissions from just 1 out of 70 fossil fuel projects in Malaysia will cause 35,000 excess deaths from heat by 2100. So again, this is just 1 out of 70 projects. So, we cannot talk about mitigating heat waves without considering the interconnected dimensions of climate change. And we have to note that Malaysia is not just a major source of global tropical deforestation, but also of fossil fuel emissions. And so, in relation to timber plantations and fossil fuels, Malaysia has used a narrative that timber plantations are a way to restore degraded forests and that methane gas is a cleaner fossil fuel. But instead of peddling these narratives to mitigate future heat waves such as this, we feel that Malaysia must honor its international climate commitments now by phasing out timber plantations and fossil fuel expansions as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Points really well made over there, Adam. I hear you clearly. Now, moving into there, perhaps to a more urban dimension. Now, any thoughts on the fact that this past week, multiple trees in different locations around Malaysia were uprooted, they fell onto roads, causing damages and also a death. Now, DBKL, KL City Hall at least, has been instructed to take immediate action by cutting down 28 of the most high-risk trees around the city. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim also responded by saying that 100 new trees would be planted for every tree that has been cut down due to being high risk. Now, let's talk about the impact that less tree or canopy cover even within our urban centers and how that's going to immediately impact us and how basically we're way behind, but planting maybe 100 more for each cut down tree is somewhat of a start.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the Kuala Lumpur suffers heavily from the urban heat island effect, and so if you look at some of the data, the center of Kuala Lumpur and all the urban areas around KL are 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees warmer in terms of air temperature to surrounding greener areas, and so planting more trees and just greening up the urban areas in general is absolutely essential to adapting to the impacts of climate change. For example, if we're looking at a 3 degree, based on current policies, we're looking at a 3.2 degree temperature rise by 2100. And so if you look at KL right now, KL is currently about average 32, 33 degrees in the daytime. If it's going to be 36 degrees in the daytime, this pretty much puts a lot of KL in an almost unlivable state. And as I mentioned earlier, green spaces can reduce temperatures by up to 3.4 degrees. So to ensure that Kuala Lumpur continues to be livable as we enter the Anthropocene, so to speak, we really need to increase the greening of the city, and we cannot just rely on air conditioning. Air conditioning it's convenient, but it exacerbates the problem. Not just in terms of energy use, but just the heat that air conditioning units generate is significant.
Yeah, definitely. And perhaps what could be other proactive approaches other than tree planting, which of course good, but is going to take a while, a couple of decades at least, until those saplings grow into trees that provide enough urban shade, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you can plant trees, but you can't necessarily plant a forest. And Malaysia's rainforests are millions of years old. Planting trees is not a substitute for cutting down primary rainforests. And so our initial goal should be to preserve our forest cover at the maximum forest extent. Currently we have this commitment to maintain forest cover at 50%. The data is varying. Some puts our canopy cover at about 59%, some says about 53, 54. Some says it's already gone below 50%, but the point is this 50% commitment leaves a lot of leeway for future deforestation, and we need to preserve maximum possible forest cover and then start talking about tree planting.
Point well noted. Adam, thank you so much for sharing your insights. That was absolutely actionable, and we hope that the relevant authorities are actually going to pay heed now that we've actually seen some of those impacts directly unfold before our eyes in the week or so. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all we had time for just then. But of course, that was Adam Farhan, co-founder and director of Rimba Watch. We take a short break. We'll be right back with the next interview. Stay logged on to Niaga Spotlight.